What's going on YouTube? It's your boy Jugger back with a brand new video. As today we're going to be making an NBA bubble tier list out of the 22 teams that will be partaking in the NBA restart going on in Orlando. I thought it'd be fun to make a tier list that is tiered within the tier list and see exactly where we place these teams, especially considering that there's just so many interesting dynamics with this particular NBA season due to the pandemic. As certain players opted out, certain players can't go yet due to having coronavirus or having symptoms, or people and they're not currently with their teams, or the players who were there and then they left due to family situations. There's a lot of different dynamics going on, and I thought for that reason this would be a very fun video to evaluate everything that's going on, where exactly every team stands, and exactly how we feel about these teams heading into the restart, especially because some players have also been able to get healthy, so that's also an interesting dynamic. So nevertheless, thank you guys for watching today. If you do enjoy today's video, please make sure to show support so I know that you guys enjoyed this video, especially so I can bring you guys more of this similar content by leaving a thumbs up, as well as also subscribing to the channel if you are new, as I am still a more new channel, so any support really does go very far with helping me bring you guys more of this content. And also leave a comment for me in that comment section. Let me know what you agreed with, what you thought I was wrong on, and anything else you want to say about the video. But definitely thank you guys just for watching, and if you do choose to support, you guys are the real MVPs. Nevertheless, let's get to the video. And I do have my fan going, so if you see my shirt kind of waving as the video goes, it's because of that. But thankfully, due to editing softwares, I can make it to where you guys don't really hear that. But nevertheless, yeah, it's really hot and I needed a fan. So let's get to the tiers. So once again, we're rating the 22 teams that will be partaking in the NBA restart. So that's going to exclude the Atlanta Hawks, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Detroit Pistons, the Timberwolves, the Minnesota Timberwolves, the Charlotte Hornets, the Chicago Bulls, and the Golden State Warriors. Those will be the teams that are excluded. The rest will all be partaking in the NBA restarts. There's 30 teams in the NBA, and 22 won't be partaking. So I mean 8 won't be partaking. So 22 playing, 8 out. That's the 30 teams. So it shall be very interesting to see how everything shakes up. And obviously there's been a lot of players who have opted out, who are dealing with injuries, who either had coronavirus and their team's not in the best position, or for family reasons or other reasons they decided to prioritize just staying safe over playing in the NBA restart. So let's get started. So at number 22, we're going to have none other than the Brooklyn Nets. And the Brooklyn Nets find themselves at the number 22 spot for no reason other than the fact that they don't have anyone. Their roster was gutted going into this NBA bubble situation, and they have a motive as to not play their best basketball. So overall, pretty much the Brooklyn Nets are going to be missing Kyrie, KD, Spencer Dinwiddie, DeAndre Jordan, Wilson Chandler, and Michael Beasley, who left the Nets due to having coronavirus. They initially signed him and then he left. So yeah, they're missing everyone, and they had to settle for signing a 40-year-old Jamal Crawford that a lot of people on social media love to hype up and show his best highlights ever, but no one's showing highlights of anything recent. Jamal Crawford is old, and in the 60 games prior to a solid 4-game stretch he saw at the end of his final games that we thought were his final games, but now he's back to playing. At the end, the 60 games prior to that 4-game stretch, he was averaging 6.4 points on 36% shooting, and he was playing old man defense. Jamal Crawford is not good. There was a reason he wasn't on a roster, and yeah, people are even suggesting that competing is not in the best interest of the Brooklyn Nets because of the fact that they have a first-round pick that they only keep if they do not make the playoffs. So ESPN's Jalen Rose and Kevin O'Connor both said that they should put their playoff dreams aside and focus on developing young talent, as well as not competing their best so that they can keep that pick, and I would have to agree with them. So that's why the Brooklyn Nets are going to be the number 22 team on our ranking. From there, we're going to actually have the Washington Wizards coming in at number 21, and the Washington Wizards are going to be at number 21 mainly because of the fact that they're not going to have their 2 elite options in Bradley Beal or John Wall, as both will not be joining the Wizards in the Orlando bubble NBA restart. They also will be missing Davis Bertans, who also said that he does not want to partake in the NBA restart, and he is going to be their tall, sharp shooting, talented big man. They do, however, have better options, I think, left on their roster than the Wizards, such as Ish Smith, who has shown that he can be a very kind of offensive juggernaut at times. He can be very, he can get the ball in the back. He's a bucket getter. He's shown that he has that ability, as well as Shabazz Napier has shown that ability at times, and they still have Roy Hachimura, Thomas Bryan, Moritz Wagner. They got other good players, so I think the Wizards will be okay. Not as bad as the Brooklyn Nets. They'll be okay. They didn't have to sign 40-year-old Jamal Crawford, and they also don't have any motives for not competing. Like, yes, they can not compete to get a better draft pick, but it wouldn't be that significant. Keeping a first-round pick is very significant. So Brooklyn has much higher motives to not compete than the Wizards, so I say the Wizards still trying to compete with the players who still are there in Orlando. So that's going to be the Wizards at the 21 spot. And that's going to be the end of the F tier. Those are the only two teams I think are in the F tier, as they just are without their absolute best players. And the players they have left over, I just don't see being enough in this NBA restart. From there, we're going to have our first and only team in the D tier, and that's going to be the Phoenix Suns. And the Phoenix Suns are going to find themselves in the D tier for the reason being that I like Devin Booker and I like DeAndre Ayton, but I just don't really like anyone else on their roster. And I wasn't able to figure it out through my research whether if Kelly Oubre was playing or not. I already finished writing up all my research on this video, as you are seeing me glance over to kind of my notes on each team as I'm doing this video. I already finished them and I thought I was done, and then a friend was telling me that Kelly Oubre may not be playing either, and he's the only other player I really like on the Suns. So if they don't have him as well, then I feel even better about this D placement. But even with him, I'm sticking to them at D, because yeah, I just don't think there's enough other than Devin Booker. Thankfully for Devin Booker, the Suns did acquire Ricky Rubio this season, which allowed him to play a lot less ball-dominant basketball. And we knew Devin Booker can do this, or at least most of us with real basketball knowledge knew. As at Kentucky, he showed lots of playing off the ball, lots of moving without the ball, coming off of screens and all that. We knew he had these capabilities, but people were kind of critiquing his basketball game because they were saying he played too ball dominant basketball, but he had to. There was no shot creators, no playmakers on the Suns last season. This year, though, he did have Ricky Rubio, who allowed him to play a lot more off-ball basketball, and we saw him thrive in that role. And then DeAndre Ayton, a player who is still coming into his own, very young player, but he made massive strides defensively this year, so that was good to see as well. But outside of those two, especially if there's no Kelly Oubre, the Suns are still 26-39 for a reason, and they had a decent start to the season, but overall, we know the Suns are the Suns, and not really good coaching, not really good management overall. Just the culture around the team really does hinder a team like the Suns, and overall, I just don't see much coming out of anything but Devin Booker and maybe DeAndre Ayton having some good numbers. Otherwise, the Suns won't be making any noise in Orlando, so they're going to be in the number 20 spot on my rankings. From there, we're going to get into our first C-tier team, and we're going to have a few teams here. So we got the Orlando Magic as the first team, and this is another team where I should have, before I started recording, just figured this out. But my friend once again started telling me that Jonathan Isaac may not be with the Orlando Magic, and for that reason, I may have moved them into D-tier, just barely above the Suns, if they're not going to have Jonathan Isaac, because Jonathan Isaac is so amazing, such a good defender, and he's still trying to figure out things on offense, but I think he has immense potential on the defensive end, so hopefully he can figure those things out on offense, and then he just has that crazy frame that he's been blessed with. So yeah, no Jonathan Isaac would mean a lot for Orlando, but nevertheless, they still do have a plethora of other good players. One of the most underrated in the entire league, in my opinion, being Terrence Ross, who is a extremely good bench player, doesn't get nearly enough love, and actually should be in the six-man conversation. No one's talking about him, though. The other things that made me feel a little bit good about the Orlando Magic as kind of a small sleeper team is that they have Mo Bamba, and Mo Bamba said that he gained 28 pounds since quarantine, and he said that they did a whole body testing thing once he got over to Orlando, and he figured out that he only added 2.5% body fat, so a lot of that's muscle, and that's been one of the biggest critiques for Mo Bamba in his small NBA career, is that he hasn't been physical enough and he's had an inconsistent motor, so maybe adding all that muscle can allow him to bang more with bigs, have more energy, consistent energy, and also be a better rebounder. He's already a pretty good defender. According to NBA's advanced stats, players shoot 7% worse within 6 feet within the rim when Bamba's around than they normally do. So it shows that all the defensive potential is there, and if he can make that frame even better, I think then the sky's the limit. So I'm hoping Mo Bamba really shows out in the NBA restart, as I like to see young players thrive rather than getting critiqued and not getting a chance, especially bigs. People are so impatient with young players and want them to be good right away, but especially bigs, they take a while. It takes a while to adjust to the toughness and grit and grind and the physicality of the NBA as a big man. So we got to be patient with those bigs. I would love to see Mo Bamba come on strong in the NBA restart, even though I hate that song that was dedicated to him or whatever. Just that song was terrible. But nevertheless, Mo Bamba had a body transformation like a lot of players during quarantine. And yeah, I think the Magic are a little deeper than teams give them credit, but nevertheless, I could see them being competitive. They probably won't upset anyone, but I could see them being competitive, and that gives them a spot at the bottom of our C tier. So we'll see what they can do there. The next team in the C tier is actually going to be none other than the Sacramento Kings. And the Sacramento Kings are going to find themselves in the C tier because I actually think this team's a little bit more talented than this spot, but they find themselves here because they're actually one of the teams getting hit with coronavirus-related stuff the worst. Buddy Hyde, Alex Lynn, Jabari Parker all tested positive for coronavirus prior to leaving to Orlando, and then Harrison Barnes and Rashawn Holmes are both, Harrison Barnes did as well, and then Rashawn Holmes, he accidentally tried to pick up some food outside of the NBA bubble, so he's currently quarantined. So they just have so many players who weren't from the start. They're practicing, preparing, and just being there with the team, building the chemistry, and getting ready to partake in this NBA restart. And that matters to me. That actually matters a lot, especially for a team that's not at the height of some of the other teams. They need everyone ready, engaged, and getting ready for this grind that this small restart is going to be. And then overall, too, thankfully, though, Hyde and Parker have since joined back to the Kings, so they do have those two back, as the rest are still trying to figure things out. And then my last issue with the Kings is actually De'Aaron Fox. Even though I'm actually a huge De'Aaron Fox fan, if I actually thought NBA jerseys weren't overpriced, I would have a De'Aaron Fox jersey. But De'Aaron Fox has only been scoring 0.88 points per possession in the half court, so it just shows he's relying a little too much on the fast break and his speed for his scoring. And when the game slows down, he's not scoring nearly as well as they need him to, as that puts him in the 31st percentile according to Synergy Sports. So yeah, that's quite disappointing because that's actually similar to his exact number last season. And considering the huge leap he had from his freshman to his sophomore season, yeah, you would expect a more growth in that area, but we haven't seen it quite yet. So we'll need to see De'Aaron Fox be able to do that, especially if the Kings somehow work their way into a playoff seed. The game's going to slow down, and teams' defense is going to definitely be heightened. So they're going to need De'Aaron Fox to be able to score in the half court, their best player. So we'll see if he's able to make that jump. But overall, I kind of doubt him doing it now. I think down the run, but I don't see it happening now. So for now, the Kings are going to find themselves here, even if they're getting Marvin Bagley back, who had been injured for most of the season. I don't think that'll be enough. We're going to keep them here in the C tier. At 17, we're going to have none other, and our last team in the C tier is going to be the San Antonio Spurs. And the San Antonio Spurs have quite the interesting situation unfolding. So pretty much, they are, first and foremost, they have their 22-year playoff streak being jeopardized, as they currently are on the outside looking in when it comes to the playoffs. And then they also will undoubtedly finish under 500, which is going to be for the first time since they tanked for Tim Duncan. So a lot of unfortunate things unfolding with the Spurs, and I think it's even worse because of the fact that they've just been holding on to DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge. A lot of fans of the team and media personnel around the team have been saying that it's time to ship those two out and just focus on the future and go completely young and try to build through the draft and maybe try to get some trades going or something. A lot of people have been already off the boat of DeMarcus Aldridge and DeMar DeRozan and LaMarcus Aldridge as being legitimate. Like, those can be your two best players and you actually be a legitimate playoff contender. So, and I honestly, for the most part, I agree. Even though I really do like LaMarcus Aldridge, and LaMarcus Aldridge is actually out the NBA restart due to undergoing shoulder surgery that is going to sideline him for the NBA restart. And this can actually maybe be a good thing, considering the fact that guess who backs him up? Jakob Poeltl. And I'm actually huge on Jakob Poeltl because he's a really good player, but he's becoming a little impatient in this backup role to LaMarcus Aldridge, because every minute for Aldridge meant that's a minute less for Jakob Poeltl. So he's getting a little impatient too. So this should be a good opportunity for him as long as they play him, because once again, one of my friends, so I discussed this with, he was telling me that they may actually go small ball with Trey Lyles. I'm very against that. I hope they play Jakob Poeltl because he's really good. When it comes to Jakob Poeltl, when he was on the floor without LaMarcus Aldridge, the team was outscoring other teams by 4.5 points per 100 possessions. When LaMarcus Aldridge was on the floor without Jakob Poeltl, they were getting outscored 3.4 points per 100 possessions. That's not to say that Jakob Poeltl is better than Aldridge. It's actually quite false. It's just saying that there's value in having this guy on the court. Because, like, overall, like, Jakob Poeltl's a reliable physical defender who blocks a lot of shots, and on offense he cuts, rolls, and rebounds and passes well. So this guy needs playing time. He needs to be playing, and this is the best opportunity to get him that playing time that he definitely deserves. So I'm hoping that they do that. And yeah, he recently talked to the Austrian press agency, and it was in an interview that has been translated, and he said, yeah, I don't know if that's an optimal situation for me another year. And he's alluding to being behind Aldridge in the depth chart, and he's like, I'm going into my 5th year in the NBA. I'm not saying that from the start I expected 30 minutes in the 5th year, but I expected progress every year, and he hasn't seen that progress recently. So we'll have to see what unfolds, especially since Jakob Poeltl is going to be an unrestricted free agent, and I'm pretty sure that if the Spurs don't give him more minutes, or if they choose not to pay him, he'll happily go to another team that will. So we'll see what unfolds there. For now, the Spurs are going to be there. Moving on from there, we do have the Portland Trailblazers are going to be the bottom of our B tier, and I would actually have loved to put Portland higher, considering they're going to be getting Zach Collins and Yusuf Nurkic back, and Yusuf Nurkic is so much better than a lot of people realize, and he's just so vital to Portland's success, as they look like one of the best teams in the NBA with him last year, and now they've looked like a very underachieving team this year. So yeah, Yusuf Nurkic, obviously he suffers from the compound fracture to his left tibia and fibula in March of 2019, and Yusuf Nurkic was so good for them because he posted big numbers at times, but even when he wasn't posting big numbers, he was integral to Portland's success as an elite screener, a solid passer, a bruising rebounder, and an impactful defender. So they definitely need his presence. And then I'm going to put a little chart on the screen now, and this will even exemplify his value as associated as to how much better Damian Lillard played with him and without him. So obviously you can tell Damian Lillard's definitely been missing his favorite pick and roller. It hasn't hurt Damian Lillard enough to where he still hasn't had huge games, and it also hasn't hurt him enough to where he wasn't the cover athlete of 2K, so congrats to Damian Lillard for that. But he definitely would benefit a lot more, especially his team overall, success-wise, would benefit from having Yusuf Nurkic there, as their defense has dropped a lot. But a huge reason I also didn't put them higher is, one, I don't know if Yusuf Nurkic is going to come back and play his best same basketball like he was prior to the injury. Second, I don't know if Zach Collins will do the same either. And next is the fact that I actually think there's more to the Blazers defense being worse than just that. They got rid of 2 of their best 3-and-D guys in Al-Farouq Amino, and I cannot remember the other dude's name. Like, it's on the tip of my tongue. I can think of exactly how he looks, but I can't remember it, so you guys will remind me in the comment section. But they got rid of some good defenders in the offseason coming into this year, and I think that also is a huge reason why their defense has suffered, because they replaced those guys with guys like Carmelo Anthony, and Carmelo shows good defense in pieces, but he's not nearly as consistently good of a defender as some of these other guys that they let go last season. So yeah, we'll see what Portland can actually do. I'm just too questionable about it all, and I'm leaning more towards than I'm leaning towards I think they'll do it, so we'll see. But overall, if Yusuf Nurkic comes back and is playing that same basketball, they're one of the biggest sleeper teams going into the NBA restart. I could see them making a lot of noise, so and being very competitive. So we'll see what they're able to do. And it is worth noting that even though he's been a little bit of a letdown this season, Trevor Ariza also did say that he will not be partaking in the NBA restart, so they won't have his services for that for this upcoming restart. So we'll see. Definitely a team worth watching, nevertheless. Moving on from them, we're going to get into our next team, which is the Utah Jazz. And the Utah Jazz are going to be a team that I've never really been too high on. I like Donovan Mitchell. I don't love Donovan Mitchell. Rudy Gobert's good, but I think he's very overrated personally. And then they have other solid pieces, but no one else is great. And then when you also factor in, the biggest thing is the fact that Bojan Bogdanovic is out with a season-ending wrist injury, and that's a huge loss. Bojan is a bucket getter. This guy gets buckets, and he's also a very good spot up and catch and shooter. So that's definitely going to really hurt the Utah Jazz, in my opinion, more than some people may believe. And I know things have been very positive out of the Utah Jazz's Orlando camp. People are saying their experiences and the practices, and in particular, everyone's retention of the playbook has been really good. But yeah, sadly, I'm being a little bit more cynical with the Utah Jazz, and yeah, I think I'm not feeling great about their chances to really compete come this NBA restart. And even though Donovan Mitchell was in an interview recently saying that he is working on being a better passer and getting his teammates involved more, I just think he's quite not there yet as being that superstar level talented player to where he can really get the Jazz over the hump. So yeah, for those reasons, and mainly because of Rudy Gobert too, I think Rudy Gobert is such an overrated defender. He's so good around the basket, but when you get a stretch 4 or a stretch 5 on him and move him away from the basket, his presence on defense becomes very minuscule to what it generally is. And then same thing, if he gets caught up in the pick and roll and switches on to guards, he generally gets cooked. He does not play good defense on guards often, or more often not than he plays bad defense, in my opinion. So yeah, I think Rudy Gobert's an overrated player. And then I think players who are very one-dimensional offensively, like Rudy Gobert, who just scores off of dunks and oops, I think they kind of get called out in the playoffs when defense and game planning gets better. We kind of see how bad their offense really is. So I think he's not good enough to be their second best player personally. So yeah, for that reason I'm pretty low on the Jazz, but they definitely still have talent and they definitely can still make lots of noise and they can prove me wrong. So we'll see what happens in the NBA restart. But that's where I got the Jazz. Moving on from there, we're going to have the Indiana Pacers as the 14th team and the third team in the B tier. And Indiana Pacers are going to find themselves there, mainly because I would love to put them even higher. I think this is a very deep team and I actually really like their coaching as well from Nate McMillan. I think he should be, he's one of those top coaches in the league in my opinion. But the biggest question is Victor Oladipo. The status on whether or not he's going to play or not. He did travel with the team to Orlando and he has rescinded his initial remark that he wouldn't play at all and turned it into he's uncertain if he'll play after some good practices. But him playing will be vital to see how far this Pacers team can really go. He showed amazing things in the playoffs last season as the Pacers were able to take the Cavs to 7 games. Nevertheless though, he still is recovering from a huge injury, so he's not quite at that same level, but the Pacers can still really use him. But I do think the Pacers are a really solid team when it comes to being able to have that next man up mentality. But they are missing Jeremy Lamb as well, as Jeremy Lamb tore his ACL back in February, and he will not be there for them. And he provided very solid bench scoring as Jeremy Lamb had really figured out his role in the NBA as of recent. So it's unfortunate that they won't have him, but yeah. Nevertheless, I think if there's a team that can do some next man up that's in that middle tier of teams, I think it's the Pacers, and I like their coaching, and they've been able to stay around the top 10 in their defensive rating. I think they got good pieces. I like Sabonis, I like Miles Turner, I like TJ Warren, I like Brogdon, I like a lot of their players, and I see them playing some good basketball and being very competitive come the NBA restart, especially if they could have Oladipo, so we'll have to see what happens there, but they'll find themselves here for now. Moving on from there, we're actually going to have the New Orleans Pelicans. And the Pelicans are finding themselves at 13th, mainly just due to the recent kind of question marks that are circling around Zion. Zion is integral to the Pelicans' success, as we saw them look like a very, very solid team when they had Zion actually on the court, as they were kind of being very monitoring and being very careful and cautious with his minutes due to the lingering injuries that Zion was dealing with, and for good reason. But Zion has really shown in a very small time frame that on a per minute basis that he is one of the best players in the league, and that's without what he's best at, because the Pelicans actually posted up Zion at one of the highest marks in the league. 26% of his possessions came from being posted up, and that's so perplexing to me, considering that that's not what he's best at. Zion's post moves are redundant, even though he scores in a post because he's a player, he's a baller, and he has that frame and body that just he knows how to use it. He still is not that's not what he's best at. He's best at getting the ball on the run off of design cuts, off of design plays that allow him to kind of attack the basket rather than do a post move and try to score that way. So yeah, it's quite perplexing, and it just highlights how much potential Zion has to even get so much better. So especially if the Pelicans learn to use him, utilize his skills in a way that best allows him to succeed. So it'll be interesting if we get to that point. But overall, there are some oh my lord, I cannot speak. There's some interesting things surrounding Zion, considering that he did leave the NBA bubble for an emergency family matter, which means that if he's getting tested every day at minimum, he will have to quarantine for 4 days when he gets back. And if he's not getting tested every day at minimum, he'll have to quarantine for 10 days when he gets back to the NBA bubble. So he will be missing preparation, practice, and just time getting ready and engaged with his team, which I think very much so matters, especially for a young player. And then furthermore, He also was dealing with some leg cramps prior, so was practicing limitedly in the time that he was even there in Orlando. And any injuries with Zion are just always very cautious things to keep mind of, because of the fact that his body and his frame is something a lot of people have been very vocal about, that it won't last for that much longevity. It won't allow him to prosper for too long in the NBA. I'm not someone with that mindset, but I do know that there is a possibility, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, pretty much Pelicans are here because I'm just feeling a little iffy about what's going on with Zion, even though I wanted to kind of put them in this next spot. But I do feel good about putting this team in this spot, and that's going to be the Memphis Grizzlies in the 12th spot, and our next team in the B tier. Memphis Grizzlies find themselves here because of those things going on with Zion. I was able to be like, yeah, Memphis should be over them, but also because Ja Morant added 12 pounds of muscle during the NBA hiatus, so props to him for doing that. That could definitely be very beneficial to his game. And then Jaren Jackson Jr. and Brandon Clark being one of the league's most productive bench players, they're both able to get healthy during the NBA hiatus as they were dealing with some lingering injuries, so good for both of those guys too. And then we'll actually finally see the debut of Justin Winslow, who the Grizzlies acquired via a trade in February. So all those things are pointing towards positive. The thing with the Grizzlies is everything's just positive, and the Pelicans have a little bit of that negativity going on surrounding Zion, so it was hard to kind of elevate them over a team with all this positive things going on. And then also, I also love Valanciunas. Jonas Valanciunas is very underrated as far as his impact on games. During the time frame that Jaren Jackson Jr. and Brandon Clark were out, Jonas Valanciunas stepped up as a rebounder and defender very much so. And he also is one of the biggest reasons why the Grizzlies remain the top team in the NBA when it comes to points in the paint. And I think he'll continue to set the tone offensively down low and provide good rebounding and defensive presence. So I like the Grizzlies heading into the NBA restart, and I think they'll be a very hard team to knock off once we get to that point. So I like them. From there, we're going to move over to our next B tier team, and that's going to be none other than the Oklahoma City Thunder. The Oklahoma City Thunder are one of the best feel-good stories of the NBA this season. ESPN's BPI gave them only a 0.2 chance of making the playoffs this year, and considering that they're now holding down the 5th seed in the West, now people are trying to say that they're better than last year's Oklahoma City Thunder team that had Russell Westbrook and Paul George. Nobody would have been saying that at the beginning of the year, especially because people didn't realize how good Chris Paul was still. But that just goes to show that when you allow Chris Paul to be that man on a team, he can really figure out a lot of things rather than being the Robin to a James Harden or something. So the Oklahoma City Thunder had the second most wins in the league since Thanksgiving, and they actually had the best winning percentage during that time frame as well. The third best winning percentage during that time frame as well. So the Thunder have been thriving, very much so thriving. Only teams with a better win percentage are the Lakers and Bucks. So the biggest question you have to ask is what's led to all this all this success? Oh my lord, all this sex. You have to wonder what's led to all this success. And at the end of the day, it's none other than the point god in CP3. CP3 affects winning like few other players. He's on the level of LeBron when it comes to how he affects win, especially when you give him the keys to the car. He didn't fully have the keys to the car in Houston, and you saw the way that transpired. Here, he was given the keys to the car. This is your team. Help these young guys and these other players like Danilo and Steven Adams thrive, and he's helped these guys thrive very much so. We've seen very solid basketball from these guys. They've been able to maintain a very high offense efficiency. They still got some work to do defensively, but offensively, they've been very, very good as a team. And the Oklahoma City Thunder overall, they take so much less bad shots than they did the year before, and then they also just play such good team-oriented basketball. As any night, one guy could drop the most points on their team as opposed to what they were experiencing last season. And then there's also the possibility that they'll have Andre Robertson back and healthy coming this NBA restart. So it'll be very good if they can get him back to help shore up that defense that could use a little bit of help. So that'll be another interesting dynamic to unfold. And then they just have so many other talented players, especially since the NBA just recently said that they're ending the award. Like, what what they're evaluating the awards off of, such as six-man, MVP, and all those awards, they're evaluating off of everything that happened prior to this NBA pause. So for that reason, Dennis Smith-Schroeder will likely win the Six-Man of the Year award. So they have a Six-Man of the Year award player. They have a bucket getter in Danilo Gallinari. They have one of the best young talented players in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And then they just have other very good players like Steven Adams. So the Thunder have great players to support CP3 as well as CP3 within himself. And yeah, it's all you need to give CP3 for him to be able to compete. So I've loved what I've seen from the Thunder, but they're not deep. This is not a team that's deep. They have like about an 8-man rotation, if that, that they can go with. And Nerlens Noel recently tweaked his ankle in practice, so it's not a good sign to see. But that is why the Oklahoma City Thunder aren't higher, because I just think that they lack the depth that some of the teams above them have. So we're going to get on to our next team, and I think this is the last team in B tier, and that's going to be none other than they're the second to last team in the B tier, and that's going to be none other than the Philadelphia 76ers. And the Philadelphia 76ers, I almost want to put them lower, but at the end of the day, they have so much talent that the expectation have to be higher. It has to be. You can't put them any lower than this. So for me, the 76ers, they lack. I want to go over all the things I dislike about them, and the first thing is going to be their mental toughness. I think that they really lack in mental toughness, as there's just no other explanation for them being 29-2 at home, but then 10-24 on the road. That just sounds like a lack of mental fortitude, in my opinion. And then overall, I think there was a lot of finger pointing and blaming this, blaming that, and even Brett Brown was doing a little bit of pointing and blaming throughout the season. I just think there's a huge lack of accountability, and that just all goes back to just being a good leader and having that mental toughness. So I haven't liked what I've seen from them when it comes to the mental part of the game of basketball and life. And then also, even though the 76ers are a very good defensive team, on the offensive end, they've kind of struggled. And that's due to Ben Simmons' unwillingness to shoot, obviously, which is kind of packed in the lane for them, especially when they added Al Horford, who's really struggled with his outside shot as well. And then even furthermore, their inconsistent play from key role players like Tobias Harris, Josh Richardson, and Al Horford. And yeah, they stumbled to an 18th spot in offensive efficiency, and that's not just good, and that's not good enough for a title contender. So they'll have to figure that out. And then my next issue is with Brett Brown, like I've already alluded to. I think he's not the best fit for any team, but particularly a team like the 76ers that's talented, but they need someone to really figure out how all the pieces fit together. And Brett Brown hasn't done that. And now he just recently announced that he's going to play Ben Simmons at power forward. And this is a move that no matter what makes Brett Brown look bad. And I'll explain why. One, Ben Simmons' former assistant coach at LSU, David Patrick, has been extremely vocal about this move needing to be made way sooner, like so much sooner, considering that Ben Simmons gets all his points around the rim, that this would be where he would thrive the most. And obviously that just goes more into the issue. If this goes well, Brett Brown's going to look stupid and dumb for not making this change sooner. What would have taken this long, especially considering all the negativity, speculation, just all the bad things that were surrounding this team throughout the season, especially when they were struggling. It would just be like, why didn't you make this move sooner? Why did it take this long? Was it rocket science to play a guy who doesn't want to shoot threes at a different position, especially considering that who cares if he can dribble the ball and that he's big and he has good vision? Play him at the position where his offensive game actually will excel. So if it goes well, he looks dumb for that reason. If it doesn't go well, then he looks dumb because it's like, how could you not have known that this is when, like, you stuck to your britches of keeping him at point guard for so long that if this goes bad, it's like, what made you change it now? Did you just finally concede to the pressure of other people saying you should do this? If so, it shows that you don't have the toughness, you don't have the gut, you don't have the backbone to be an NBA coach if you let the outside kind of speculation and talk allow you to jump off of what you thought was best for your team and best for your players to succeed. So no matter what, Brett Brown looks bad here, and I'm just not a Brett Brown fan. So yeah, that's how I feel about him. The 76ers have stumbled to a 6th seed in the East, which is very disappointing and underachieving for that team. And overall, we'll just have to see if some of their players can really step up and show that they're better than what their record shows so far. So we'll have to see what the 76ers are able to do. But I'm not feeling too great about them, and that's why we find them there in the B tier. And the last team in the B tier is actually going to be none other than the Miami Heat. And the Miami Heat are going to be here. And I actually got into a little bit of a mental complex with this, especially because my friend was trying to tell me stuff, and I was like, oh, those are fair points. So pretty much the mental complex was that if the Heat and the 76ers were to face off in a playoff series, I would have the Heat winning, but I would feel like it's an upset. I think that the Sixers are a more talented team, so I initially thought the Sixers should be above the Heat for that reason. but I think they're more talented, but that's not all that goes into basketball. Leadership, coaching, chemistry, and just overall fits all matter as far as how good a team actually performs. And we see that in how the 76ers have performed up until this year. So for that reason, I feel very strongly that the Miami Heat are in a much better place for all of those things rather than just straight off talent. They're doing better in all those other categories. And I feel pretty strongly about how much better they're doing in those categories. So for that reason, I just could not put the 76ers above them. Jimmy Butler's such a better leader than Ben Simmons and Embiid. The chemistry between the Miami Heat seems to be so much better than the 76ers. The coaching from Eric Spoelstra is much better than Brent Brown. And I like the way all the pieces fit together overall much more than the way the 76ers fit together. And let's just talk about the 76ers even a little bit more. For the 76ers, the hype behind this team is only really built this season. Prior to this season, there wasn't a lot of hype with all the roster turnover they dealt in the post-Dwayne Wade era. There wasn't a lot of hype for this team. And then especially, no one even thought they were even going to be able to get Jimmy Butler considering their cap situation. So this team only started to get a lot of hype during this year, especially with all the young talent that's really emerging for them this year. So for them, I feel like even if they lose, there's a lot to still look forward to. As long as they're competitive, there's a lot to still look forward to. The 76ers really need to at least get to Eastern Conference Championship. Otherwise, and even then, it could still be a disappointment with where they're at and all the money they threw at Al Horford. And then it turns into all these other speculations for them of, do you get rid of Al Horford? Who would even want Al Horford? Do you break up Embiid and Simmons, a duo that people have been very vocal about, don't really complement each other's games? Like, what do you do with the Sixers? Just all the questions arise. But for the Heat, it's like, we just go to free agency and try to get Victor Oladipo, who's been very much so, and who lots of people are saying is likely to land with the Heat in this offseason. So they either can just go and get a free agent, or they just sit on their young talent, Tyler Hero, Kendrick Nunn, Duncan Robinson, and mainly Bam Adebayo, and allow those guys to develop into even better players coming into next season. There's too much to look forward to for the Heat, and there's a lot to just be frustrated with for the Sixers. So I thought it was eventually it became an easy choice to keep the Heat over the Sixers. And then I also feel like Bam is going to come with an even deeper offensive package and even better defensive presence in this NBA restart, as I think he's just one of the highest. He has the highest potential out of a lot of the young players in the league. Can't wait to see how he does. It should be fun. And this Heat team's a team I'm excited to see them perform. So that will be the last team in the B tier for me. And moving on to the A tier, we're going to have none other than the Denver Nuggets kicking things off for us. And the Denver Nuggets are going to be a team that is very talented. Like, the Denver Nuggets are super talented, and they've had a lot of buzz around their team. The buzz has mainly been around Nikola Jokic, considering all that weight that he lost during the NBA hiatus. He looks skinny almost now, and a lot of people said this could be great for him, and some people said, I don't know how I feel about this. Like, he can regret it, because he is a player who used his way and threw it around to his advantage. So it'll be interesting seeing if he becomes more agile or if it hinders his game as far as how that weight factors in for him. Because it wasn't just gaining, it was losing weight, and you never know how losing weight can go for a player. So yeah, the superstar center made a drastic weight change, and I'm just too unsure how that's going to affect his game. From there, we also saw that the Nuggets are dealing with a shortage of guards. There's no sign of Monty Morris yet in the bubble. No PJ Dozier. No Gary Harris. No Torrey Craig. None of those guys have made it to the bubble yet, likely for COVID-related things. And then they're also missing Michael Porter Jr. So Denver is dealing with a huge shortage of players. And for that reason, Mike Malone's been forced to practice players in unusual positions. He talked about Jeremy Grant playing the two guard, as well as Bol playing the two guard. And we haven't even seen Bol play real action for the Denver Nuggets. So I'd be super interesting to actually get to see him. I think he would definitely help the team, but if it's coming at the expense of other vital players, I don't think that'll be good. Especially, they need Michael Porter Jr. definitely. So we'll have to see what transpires. But due to all that going on with the Denver Nuggets, I was okay with putting them below this next team, even though my personal bias probably factored in a little bit, and that's going to be the Dallas Mavericks. And that's actually my team. I am a Dallas Mavericks fan, and I just gave them the slight edge over the Denver Nuggets in the A tier. So for me, obviously the Dallas Mavericks are dealing with a shortage of players too. Jalen Brunson, Dwight Powell, and Courtney Lee are all still recovering from season-ending injuries, and Willie Cauley-Stein actually opted out of the NBA restart, so they won't have him either. So for that reason, the Mavericks have hinted at deploying a little bit of small ball for that reason, since they won't have Dwight Powell and Willie Cauley-Stein. But they still will have Kristaps Porzingis, Maxi Kleber, and Boban Marjanovic. And then they replaced Willie Cauley-Stein with Trey Burke. So they still do got some bigs. So we'll see exactly how that goes. But I could see small ball working out for the Mavericks. So we'll see where they go. Another thing that benefits the Mavericks, though, is the fact that this hiatus has allowed Luka and Porzingis, both who dealt with some injuries during the NBA season, to get 100% healthy. So you love to see that, especially because those two were really figuring out how they complement each other right before the NBA pause. But people are placing some lofty expectations on Luka Doncic. Paul Pierce even recently went on The Jump and said that he is the most talented player in the NBA, so quite the soundbite. We'll see if he can kind of live up to those expectations in the playoffs. Lots of people want to see him in the playoffs, so we'h see. And overall, the biggest question for me is who's that third option on the Mavericks? We've seen good moments from Tim Hardaway Jr., Seth Curry, Dorian Finney-Smith, and even DeLon Wright, but no one consistently has stepped up in that third man role, so we'll see what exactly happens there. And then also, we'll have to see how Luka Doncic does when things aren't going his way. In their losses, Luka Doncic has shot 13% worse from three than in wins. So when his shot's not falling, does he just keep chucking, or does he find other ways to help his team win games? We'll have to see if he's able to do that, as that's like the next evolution of his game for me. And then we'll also have to see if the Mavericks can get out that 7 spot, because that's not a good spot to be in. In the 7th seed, they'd be looking at the Los Angeles Clippers in the first round, and that's a series that I highly doubt they would be able to win. Could definitely be very competitive, but I just don't know if they could win that series. So hopefully they can maybe work their way into a better seeding in that Western Conference as well. But overall, it'll be very interesting to see what all the Mavericks bring to the table in this NBA restart. From there, we're going to get into our next team in the A tier, and that's going to be none other than the Houston Rockets. And Houston Rockets is a team that I've notoriously not been too high on when speaking basketball with my friends, and it's pretty much because I'm not the biggest James Harden or Russell Westbrook fans. I don't dislike them or their games. I just think that there's very glaring flaws with the way that they approach the game of basketball, and it can lead to MVPs, but when it comes to postseason success, I think that's where the line's drawn for both of these two games, unless they reach a new evolution of their game that I personally haven't quite seen yet. But obviously the Houston Rockets fully embraced small ball this year due to the inclusion of Russell Westbrook, as they traded away Clint Capella and have been playing Robert Covington and PJ Tucker at the center position throughout the season. And this drastic and ballsy decision has actually worked out for them. Russell Westbrook has played some of the best basketball of his career, as he's been just attacking the basket like he should and hasn't settled for three-point shots, considering he's been a notoriously atrocious three-point shooter throughout his career. Nevertheless, even with that amazing stretch from Russell Westbrook and them having like one of the most talented NBA duos you can think of, having 2 MVPs and just offensive juggernauts, in Russell Westbrook bringing the triple-double god and James Harden just putting up ridiculous numbers offensively, I'm still not high on these guys, and I'll explain why. One is that when you look at the turnovers, the record for most turnover in season, guess who's number 1 and who's number 2? James Harden's number 1 and Russell Westbrook's number 2. That right there for me shows that they mentally aren't the best players, because I think turnovers generally are a mental thing. When you start turning over the ball, it's because you're trying to do too much or because you are just having mental lapse. And I think James Harden has more of the mental lapse, and Russell Westbrook does more of the trying to do too much. And even James Harden has the do too much thing at times as well. But James Harden has reacted very poorly to double teams at times, which has led to turnovers. Even this year against the Charlotte Hornets, there was a very kind of clip that got a little bit viral of the announcers in Charlotte. They were making fun of him because he had a quadruple double because he had 10 turnovers, which went along with his other stats to make it a quadruple double. And that's a very common thing with James Harden, and same thing with Russell Westbrook. So that's not good for me with your 2 best players. And then furthermore, I don't think neither of them are the best leaders. I think Russell Westbrook has a lot of trouble deferring to other players, as notoriously against the Utah Jazz last year. Paul George was having a great game, but he just kept taking shots and didn't allow Paul George to do his thing, and they ended up losing to the Utah Jazz and allowed Donovan Mitchell to take that series for them due to Russell Westbrook just not deferring. And then a lot of people said that Kevin Durant left the Oklahoma City Thunder because Russell Westbrook wasn't deferring. So it doesn't seem like star players feel too inclined to stick around Russell Westbrook, and what would be the real reason for that? And then furthermore for me too, while an offensive mastermind at times, Mike D'Antoni can be that, I'm not too high on any other aspect of his ability to coach. I don't think he's good at defensive adjustments. I don't think he's good at in general adjustments. And I just don't think he's a good leader of men. So I could see him being out-coached throughout the playoffs as well. And I think coaching matters in the playoffs. And then, yeah, I just think all those reasons I alluded to pretty much show why I'm just not huge on the Houston Rockets in the postseason. Those two talented players in the regular season, you'll get a lot of wins, you'll get a lot of stats, but in the postseason it becomes leadership, chemistry, deferring, giving up stats for allowing your other players to do well, and I just haven't seen enough of that from Russell Westbrook and James Harden. So for that reason, I don't think they're enough to be fully legitimate championship contenders, but they still are number 6, so the talent's there. We'll just have to see if they can make that next leap as far as those other aspects of the game. Next, though, we're going to get into the Boston Celtics are my next team in the A tier, and I guess I'll have to do that. And the Boston Celtics find themselves here, not because of the Jason Tatum hype, which I think has gotten so out of control. The Celtics fans are holding so much on to that February of basketball he played and to those little stretches he had in that playoff series against the Cavs that went to 7 games that they're making me lose my mind. Jason Tatum's not nearly as good as you guys think. He's great. He's really good, but he's not great. He hasn't sustained that level of play for any prolonged period of time other than that February. So we'll have to see more of it before we can crown Jason Tatum anything else. But people love overhyping him. But overall, there are a few teams with the depth that the Celtics have, and that's the main reason why I find them here. Their depth is great. Few teams with their depth and skill level to produce on all 3 scoring levels, and few are capable of hunting and punishing mismatches like the Celtics. I love their coaching too. They have a very solid coach, and they play just some of the best team basketball in the NBA. And then also they just have the luxury, I feel, of if someone's having an off game, if Jason Tatum's having an off game, Jaylen Brown can step up, Marcus Smart can step up sometimes, Gordon Hayward can step up, Kemba Walker can step up. So I do think they're a really good team when it comes to stepping up too. Not some other teams don't have that luxury as far as stepping up, but I think they do. And then lastly, we saw Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum and even Marcus Smart in phases really shine in the spotlight during the playoffs against the LeBron-led Cleveland Cavaliers in that series that went to 7 games. And I think that just shows that they don't shy from the spotlight. They actually play better in the spotlight, which is a great thing to see from young players like the ones that they have. And that was with Kyrie Irving's sidelines. So not only do they have Kemba Walker now, they also aren't dealing with the immense amount of just weird issues that come with having Kyrie Irving on your team. So for that reason, I think they have potential to even perform better in this year's playoffs. So we'll have to see what transpires, but I'm pretty high on the Celtics due to coaching, team basketball. They've stayed in the very high in defensive efficiency throughout the year. And I just overall think that they're a very solid team, so I can see them doing some good things. And the last team in our A tier is going to be none other than the Toronto Raptors. And the Toronto Raptors find themselves here due to a lot of those same reasons of the Celtics. I just think they're a little higher as far as overall talent than the Celtics. But yes, the Toronto Raptors are solid team basketball, offensively and defensively, great coaching, and just overall just buying into a scheme and just really embodying what it means to play to be a Toronto Raptor. So I like what I've seen from, and overall they have some interesting situations that have unfolded during this NBA hiatus. Marc Gasol lost a ton of weight, so I'm a little uncertain on how that's going to factor with his game. We'll have to see. And Chris Boucher said that he gained 15 pounds, so we'll see how that factors into his game, especially since he said that he felt like his lack of weight was hindering his game. He felt like he was unbalanced at times, and he was so worried about contact while he played. So we'll see how that helps. But the one bad thing is Pascal Siakam said he didn't go out his house for 3 months and didn't even touch a basketball. So we'll see if that hinders his game or how exactly that affects him offensively and defensively when it comes to him playing. And that's huge too, because a lot's on Pascal Siakam's shoulder. But anyways, according to the numbers, the Raptors have the toughest schedule prior to the playoffs. They are the only team that plays no team that's not currently in a playoff spot. So no I think Wizards, no Pelicans, no Spurs, no Kings, no Suns. They don't get any of those teams. They're playing only all playoff teams. And that's a huge deal because they're currently holding on to the second seed by a 3-game lead over the Celtics, and they need to hold on to that because if they lose that, they'll end up either playing the 76ers, Pacers, or Heat rather than the Magic or Nets. So that's a huge deal. They need to keep that, especially if they can play the Nets. Somehow I don't think the Nets will keep their spot. But yeah, either way, they need the easier series in the first round so they're not overextending themselves through a very grindy first round series that they may could even lose. So for them, they have to stay hopeful that they can hold on to that spot. And then The other thing, though, is just that nearly everyone on their team missed some time this year due to injury, and just the fact that they're able to still keep the second seed in the East just shows how deep this team is. Like, oh my God, this team is so deep, and they just play they have that next man up mentality more than any other team in the NBA. So you love to see it, you really love to see it. But ultimately, the biggest question is going to be Pascal Siakam. Can he fill the Kawhi Leonard-sized void that was left after their NBA championship run last season? I'm skeptical. I don't really think he can. I don't think he's there yet. I'm not sure he will get there, considering that he played a lot of years in college, so he's already a little bit on the older side, but we'll see. I like Pascal Siakam a lot, and I think he's better than a lot of people give him credit for, so we'll see what he's able to do, especially after that time away from not playing basketball. But overall, deep roster, great coaching, plays great basketball offensively and defensively, and just players love playing with each other here. So I'm high on the Toronto Raptors. Then we finally get to the S tier, though, and that's going to start with none other than the Los Angeles Lakers. And a lot of people, I know the Lakers fans are going to be rioting in the comment section, no way the Lakers should be 3, what? But hear me out. I actually personally feel like the Lakers will still win the NBA championship, and that's because I'm higher on no player more than LeBron James. And I think at the end of the day, as huge as the team basketball is, you need that star player at the end of the day who can just take over and do everything on the court. And no one ever has shown that they can do that more, in my opinion, than LeBron James. So for that reason, I still think in this year he's shown that to do it to the same extent, especially leading the league in success and just choosing a different role, but still doing it so well for this Los Angeles Lakers team that's vitally needed it, or desperately needed it. So yeah, for that reason, I have them win it all, but I didn't want my bias to make me not be kind of just like realistic with the uphill battle this will be for the Lakers, especially considering that Avery Bradley decided to forgo playing in the NBA restart. He has a child that has respiratory issues, and being in that same situation myself, I can highly resonate with that, not wanting to take any chances exposing his child to COVID and just deciding to forgo the NBA restart. So lots of respect to Avery Bradley for prioritizing his family, but that does mean that things are going to be harder on the Lakers, as Avery Bradley is an amazing defender, and he also was doing a lot of shot making during their good runs at the end of the season before it was shut down. So losing him is going to be huge. Rondo also has a right thumb injury he's expected to miss about 6 to 8 weeks, but that actually means as long as things go accordingly, he actually won't miss any of the more significant playoff series. So for that reason, that Rondo injury is not a big deal, especially because I don't think Rondo's nearly as vital as some of the other players on the Lakers, so not a huge deal. And then they did scoop up J.R. Smith, which I think is actually a good pickup. I think J.R., even though he's been out of the league since 2018, I still think J.R. can do his role of 3 and D, at least at a decent enough extent to be a good role player. So I think that was a good scoop, and I think he'll fit in well with the Laker culture. But overall, basically, I think that there's a huge lack of depth on the Lakers roster. Kyle Kuzma has not been doing his thing, and they needed him, and he just hasn't. And LeBron's 35, and I just think he's going to have to play so many minutes and just do so much for this team. It's going to be a lot on him and Anthony Davis's shoulders, and we'll see if they can do it. I think they can, but I just don't think it'll be easy at all, and I don't think that they have the highest chance of winning considering those obstacles. But overall, I'm still riding with them. But the next team we're going to have here is going to be none other than the Milwaukee Bucks at number 2 on my list, and the almost the best team in this S tier rank, but they're slightly going to miss out. And the main reason that we're going to have them miss out, even though they have the NBA's best record and the likely MVP in Giannis Antetokounmpo, the reason they're going to miss out on being number 1 for me is just I still have legit uncertainties about Giannis in the playoffs. You can only evaluate how good someone's going to perform in the playoffs based off how good they played last time in the playoffs. You can't just say like, oh, he played so good in the regular season, it'll be the same. No, playoff basketball is not the same. Defense is better, game planning is better, coaching is better, everything's better, adjustments are better. Everything is different in the playoffs. It's almost like a whole different atmosphere and game, it's so different. And for that reason, I need to see things in the playoffs for me to fully hop on the Giannis hype train, at least for postseason success. And last year's playoffs, I saw some of his game being taken away by game planning and very good defense. And even this season, at times, the Heat have played very good defense on Giannis and taken away the best aspects of his game. So I need to see a little bit of postseason success and more from Giannis in the postseason before I can just feel like they're going to be what the Bucks are going to be, what they've been in the regular season, in the postseason. But it's not going to be as easy last year to take away parts of his games as it was as it was last year, it's not going to be that easy as it will be this year, considering the fact that, one, Giannis has gotten definitely better. He's definitely a better, improved player offensively and defensively. Secondly, the pieces around him have gotten better as well. A lot of the players around him are decently better, and he overall has better teammates. So for that reason, it will also be easier for him to rely on his teammates more rather than feeling like he has to do everything. So we'll see what happens there. I do think Giannis is good mentally, but I have seen him have some mental lapses too, especially when he's playing bad. So we'll see how that factors in for them. Eric Bledsoe did recently test positive for coronavirus and is quarantining, but he has no symptoms, so I envision he'll be with the team, and they'll definitely need him as he's an amazing guard defender and good offensively too. So we'll see how that goes. ESPN's BPI, which is notorious for not being that good, but ESPN's BPI title odds have the Bucks as overwhelming favorites, as them having an 83% chance of winning the championship. I think obviously that's flawed. Vegas has the Lakers, but that's mainly because they think people will bet on the Lakers. It's based on betting odds. But yeah, that's a little flawed, but they still have lofty expectations. You can't have the NBA's best record and all these historic numbers and the MVP and not be expected to win the championship. So we'll see what they bring, but at the end of the day, Giannis nor anyone really on his team has much postseason success, like not really at the highest level. So there's a little bit of unprovenness with this team that I just need to see before I can have them as my favorites going into, or at least with the highest chance of winning the NBA restart. But the team that I have as the number one, as you guys know now, as there's just one team remaining, is the Los Angeles Clippers. And the reason I have the Los Angeles Clippers, I will get to. I first want to talk about some of the things circling around them, because there actually is some uncertainties going around with this team. First and foremost, actually dealing with quite the ordeal of coronavirus-related issues. Marcus Morris Sr., Landry Shamet, and Ivica Zubac are not with the team. They're not with the rest of the teammates inside the bubble, likely due to coronavirus, but Doc Rivers has been very persistent with not spilling any beans. Furthermore, Montrezl Harrell actually departed from the Orlando bubble due to an emergency family situation, just like Zion, and he actually was very emotional on Instagram and alluded to the fact that his grandma is sick. So prayers out to Montrezl Harrell's family. I hope that it doesn't get worse, but it seems like it's taken quite the toll on him emotionally, as he said he couldn't stop crying. And if by any chance, like as sad as that is, and as much as I wish he could just stay there with his family, if he does come back to the bubble, as they certainly need him, Montrezl Harrell is so vital to that team. If he does go back to the bubble and he's kind of emotionally checked out, that will take a huge toll on the Los Angeles Clippers. So we'll have to see how that unfolds, as this Clippers team is much more team oriented than a lot of people want to give credit to. And I actually forgot to mention with the Bucks, but the Bucks actually, they currently hold the highest point differential from their starters and their bench, highest point differential in the NBA. So they're extremely deep. But even though the numbers don't point to it, I think it's partially just because of some of the other things that have circled around the Clippers, with like Kawhi doing the, what is it called, management, the load management thing. I always forget that term. Kawhi doing load management throughout the season, and other things have disallowed the Clippers bench to be one cohesive unit throughout the season, as well as Paul George still kind of coming back from his injury. So I think the Clippers bench numbers would look better if it wasn't for that. Overall, I think the Clippers have the deepest roster in the entire league. And then when it comes down to their best two players, I think they're much deeper and well-rounded than the Lakers. And then when it comes to their best two players, Kawhi Leonard and Paul George, I just feel more comfortable in their postseason abilities than I do currently in Giannis and Chris Middleton, who are the Bucks' best two players. So for that reason, I just think they're more proven, and that's why I went with the Clippers as the best team, because I think they're nearly, if not more deep than the Bucks. I think they're kind of nearly as deep as the Bucks, probably. We'll just have to see what transpires with some of the uncertainty things that are still going around, like Montrezl Harrell and all that. But overall, that is going to be my tier list. And that's where I'm at with this NBA restart. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it's quite long, so I hope you guys didn't mind the length of the video. Nevertheless, thank you guys for watching to the end. Let me know what you thought of my tier list. Am I wrong? Am I right? What did I say that you just did not agree with, or that you did truly agree with? And let me know if you thought I provided at least good explanations for why I put these teams where they're at. And overall, let me know who you guys are picking to win the NBA restart Orlando Bubble Championship. What a weird NBA season this is, but I'm just glad to have basketball back, even if it is bittersweet. Thank you guys for the support, and I'll see you guys in the next video. This is your boy Jugger signing out. Peace.